Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad. This is my channel Anime Orange. Welcome to the review video for this recently built Boba Fett helmet I have right here. I did just recently complete this model, and of course now I want to talk a little bit about the build. I did do a build video for that, so if you want to go check out the details behind how I put this together, check that video out. I will put a link to that in the end of this video. But for now, in this video, we're just going to focus more on the issues that I had and how I felt about this build. Now, this is a little bit of an older build. The helmets came out, a couple of years ago, and I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. As far as Star Wars models and other models that Metal Earth has come out with, they've gotten more complex in the past year, 6 months to a year. A lot more complex. Some of the very recent Star Wars models that came out were very involved. Going back to this, I was expecting it to be a lot easier model, and it did only take me an hour to put this together, but it did still have some challenges with it. Not terrible challenges, not overly difficult challenges, but the mindset going into it, this was going to be a very easy model, like say the Legends models. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but it wasn't quite that easy, but close. I did run into a few things here and there that I'm going to talk about right now. The first thing you start with doing is these, I'm going to call them cheeks of the helmet because they're in the cheek area. And right off, one of the things here is I almost, or could have easily mistaken how to fold those and accidentally folded them so that the inside part pushed out. Because it's easy to misinterpret 2D directions trying to translate them into 3D, and I did that with Darth Vader's helmet quite some time back with the eyes. It looks almost like they're trying to tell you to push this out and fold the rest of it back, and they do have a note that it's concave. The colored part is on the concave side, which is this part right here. Really, there's two colors, but I guess they're not referring to the black color, they're referring to the green color. Basically, it sinks in. Now, of course, I looked at that and I was like, okay, I've made this mistake before. I looked at the instructions and I was like, I think I could be interpreting this wrong. Let me look at the picture just to be sure. Oh, this is the cheekbone. That does sink in. So quickly I figured that out. But that, I'm starting off with that warning because that's something that could easily be mistaken and done incorrectly. And I did that with the eyes of Darth Vader's helmet. And there was a debate among me and my friends and a few people online that, yes, a lot of people did interpret that incorrectly and fold it backwards because it's just quite frankly difficult to tell you how to do something in 3D on a 2D piece of paper. It's difficult to translate and easily misunderstood. Now beyond that, it is a little bit of a squeeze getting the one concave part inside the larger part. You fold it, and I focused on trying to get these two pieces, the edges, to meet as much as possible and a nice clean look. And then when I went to attach it, I needed to squeeze it more, which kind of pushed those two edges into not meeting as cleanly. And if you look at it at sharp enough an angle, you can see that they don't meet flush. There's a little bit of a gap looking in, but looking at it straight on, it's no big deal if you don't notice it. So it does work out. Not as cleanly as I'd like, but it does work out. And then there's a little bit of a detail to add on the back. You've got the center black part that you just put a curve in and attach the two side pieces, no big deal. And then you move on to the strip that goes across the top. It's part 8. The instructions indicate there's 4 tabs holding part 8 on. The instructions show to shape the 2 middle tabs, bend them inward, and the 2 outer tabs to bend them outward, and make it look like you put the outer tab in from the outside and the 2 inner tabs in from the inside, and then the other outer tab on the outside. And I initially started to do it that way, and I'm like, this honestly doesn't make any sense to do it this way. It honestly just doesn't look right, and it leaves the end with a big folded over tab gap that just, I didn't like it. I quickly flipped it so all 4 tabs were bent inwards and everything went together just fine. And I don't know if that was a mistake, if they really wanted you to do it that way, but it didn't look right to me. And then we move on to the dome. And the dome is something, this sort of dome is something that I've attacked numerous times. You deal with, the first thing that comes to mind that's very similar to this is R2-D2's head, which I've done a couple of different R2-D2 models, the silver one and the color one. And I've also done the giant R2-D2, and I think there's been other models that have similar dome shape as well, like the Snitch, the golden Snitch from Harry Potter. And I've always had a decent amount of success with it. You bend the tabs in about 90 degrees, and then you work one corner at a time and fold the tabs over. The instructions give you a little bit of a tip similar to that, but they also add in something that had honestly never really occurred to me before. The tip in the instructions is when you're doing this dome piece to fold the tabs in 90 degrees, but then also that little slot kind of fold in about 45 degrees, or fold the edge of it so it creates a better angle for things to go in. And I did that, and it did seem to help quite a bit, made it easier to come together. But you do a general shaping of the dome, you bend all of those tabs in slots, and then you just work your way around one at a time, shaping and matching things up and getting it together. It just takes some working with the hands. Not a big deal. Time consuming a little bit, but not a big deal at all. And one thing that I almost made the terrible mistake of doing is when I put the dome on the rest of it, I didn't initially pay attention to how it was aligned. And if you look at my build video, I started to put it on incorrectly and it slipped and fell. I grabbed it and tried again. The second time I actually did it correctly. And I remember sitting down with my laptop to work on editing all the bits of the video together for the build portion, and realizing, I didn't pay any attention to how that top part lined, and there is some detail to it. You've got this yellow bit over here, and you've got these two arrows here in the middle. Crap. Really, I ran down to the basement to my model to check to see, am I going to have to partially disassemble this thing and fix it for the video, for myself. And fortunately, I had done it right, and I continued with editing the video. I was like, oh, good gracious, I got so lucky with that. Pay attention. Don't do like me and not paying attention. There's two little arrows here. They kind of like play buttons. One facing one way, one facing the other. Those go right in the center. You line those up, it should be just fine. However, the thing that I have the most difficult with, and it's even starting to show itself even more now, I don't know why, is getting all of the tabs in their slot. Most of them weren't a problem, but this one on the back, somehow it's separated even more. I could not get this back tab lined up with this slot. It would not line up. And I fought with it, and I bent it over so many times on accident trying to push it into a slot at an angle that I eventually gave up on it, because if I keep doing this, I'm going to break the tab off anyway, bending it over and straightening it back out. And so I tried to move on without it, and previously it was tucked in there, not that noticeable, but now it's starting to peek out, so I'm not happy about that. Even now, if you look at it, the tab is here, and the slot is here, and it's just not lining up. Just not lining up. And then certainly one thing that's irritating me quite a bit about this model is I just couldn't get that tab lined up. Everything else was not that big of a deal, just something to overcome, but not getting that tab in is really bothering me, and I thought, I'll just forget it. There's other tabs holding it on, but now it's starting to separate. It's bothering me even more, and I just don't know what to do about it other than make sure I display it so you can't see the back. Frustrating. There it is. I don't see that if I mess with it anymore, because I did try to mess with it once even after it was together to try and wedge it into place, and it just wasn't happening. I'm pretty sure if I try to mess with it anymore, that tab's going to break off, and it's not going to matter anyway. And then we move on to adding the detail side pieces. Most of it's no big deal, except for this thing right here is about as challenging as it may look. This pole is actually folded all the way around. That was not easy to do. I managed it. It was a bit of a struggle to fold everything up in that tight area because they're such small pieces. And it doesn't look too bad. I'm surprised I didn't mangle that more than I did. And then you have this top piece that kind of folds around in an interesting way. And you can kind of see it. I'll try to get a close-up of this. The instructions indicate the different folds, but it's a little vague about whether or not this last little bit folds in and then the stick back down. And I didn't do that because by this point it's the last thing you do, and it's just such a tight area. I'm like, there's almost no way I'm going to get that right without warping or breaking something, and I left it the way it is. There's just a tiny little gap here between the top of this folded over stick and the piece that wraps around, where it looks like there's one more flap they could bend in, but then I'd have to bend the stick back down, and I'm honestly afraid to do that because I'm afraid I'm going to break it, so I've left it like it is. And I think I'm going to have to take a picture of what my instructions look like and a picture of the instructions online, because I don't think they actually exactly match in that area. The instructions that I have here that came with the kit do not indicate folding in that last flap and leaving it like that, but I think if you look at the instructions online, it kind of sort of looks like they tell you to fold that last bit of the flap in, which would also push the stick over that way, but then you'd have to bend the little connecting stick arm back down. I didn't, because it's just, I'm pretty sure I'm going to break something if I try that, or mangle something, scratch something if I try that. I've just left it like it is. And also, there is one piece in here when you're folding it around. I believe it's these two tabs kind of on the bottom of the side part. They're angled, and they're angled in a way that doesn't make sense. Like if they were angled towards where the part is folding from, things would just slide into place, but they're like angled differently. So it's kind of a stretch to get them into their spot. Instead of just being pointed straight out, they angled them, but they angled them, in my opinion, the wrong way. That was a little frustrating. Not impossible, but a little frustrating. There's been plenty of times working with Metal Earth models where you have, say, a flat area with a tab sticking up, and this part folds over like that. Well, this part is swinging in like a door. And if you look, it would be better if the tab was tilted like that to accommodate for that swing. But they just have it straight up, and you have where it's bumping along the edge of the slot and difficult to get. I've built other models like with MU where they compensate for that, and they do put the tab off at an angle, so when this swings in, it swings right cleanly over that slot and things go right into place. It almost seems like those tabs were that way. Instead of straight up, they were that way, and it was slightly more difficult than it needed to be. This model's been in production for a while now. I doubt they're going to change that. And obviously I did finish the model without a big fuss, but I found that a little bit irritating. And then you pretty much got the helmet together, and it's time to put it on this base. This neck has a half circle plate that goes up inside the helmet, and there's, let's see, 1, 2, I think it's just the 3 tabs along the bottom of the back that hold it in place. A little bit of time getting those tabs to actually sit securely, and through the process of trying to wiggle and squeeze things into place because you're partially shaping the helmet to get it around that, I ended up pushing and warping the plate so that the stand was like that. And when I got the tabs and tried to bend it back out, it popped tabs loose. So I struggled between trying to bend that plate back straight and popping tabs loose, and then getting the tabs back in and folding them and bending the plate back again. Kind of went back and forth a couple of times with that. And it is a nice looking model. It's going to look great on the shelves behind me with the rest of the helmets. From the front, it looks pretty damn good. If you look really closely, you can kind of see the dome part of the top is a little bit off. Not too bad though. Not as bad as Darth Vader's helmet. Darth Vader's helmet, I had a hard time with that and scratched it all. Heck. I really need to get a black marker and try to cover up some of the scratches. I don't think I scratched anything on here. So while the model only took an hour for me to build, it did have a little bit of struggles and frustrations. Nothing on the level of, say, the Y-Wing or the A-Wing or any of the newer models, but more so than, say, a Legends model. It was a little bit more tricky than that. Well, most of the Legends model, like the Transformers Legends models, took about an hour, but it's not that bad. It took an hour. It took an hour. There was a couple of frustrating parts, but it was over with fairly quickly, and I did, for the most part, enjoy the build, and I am glad to finally have this helmet in my collection. I have more helmets that I'm eventually going to do. I've got them all now. I've just got to build them. So I almost forgot. You may have noticed my clothing has changed. I went and took a shower, thought I was done with the video, and thought I forgot to do the one thing I like to do at the end of every video, and that's, if I had this to do again, what would I do differently? With the Boba Fett helmet, I can't really give any tips of things that I specifically would do differently with this build, but I would like another chance to get this dome right. I'm not happy getting that, not being able to get that one tab in. I'm not sure what I could do to solve that problem, except maybe start with a different tab, different slot before attaching the others. Maybe start with the back one, then try to attach the others. Maybe I could have done more preliminary shaping to make sure it was more rounded than it is, and things would have lined up better, rather than going straight to the end and not being able to force that tab in and then bending it over too many times. So I would like to give another try at doing the helmet, the top dome piece. And maybe if I had another chance at that, I could approach it differently and get it right the second time. Also, when it comes to putting the stand and parts inside, I did put the bottom part on the stand before trying to adjust and shape everything. It might have been smarter to hold my finger inside of there without, well, it might have been smarter to not put the bottom piece on, put the stem on, and hold my finger inside of there when attaching it and holding things more sturdy and more secure when putting things together, so that it didn't get bent forward. I didn't have that issue of trying to bend the bottom piece back straight and it popping tabs out. So those are the two things that I can think of I would do differently. Everything else I'm pretty satisfied with how it turned out. Satisfied at least with the approach that I made. Don't think there's any way that I could significantly make a change. Even with the two suggestions that I'd have liked to try it differently, only one of them might make much of a difference. The other, it's very questionable. The tops just didn't, dome part just didn't work out like I wanted it to. Now this is the third helmet that I've completed, for third Star Wars helmet. The other two are on the shelf behind me. We have Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker's helmet. Those are the first ones I've done, and I was told by somebody, by commenter, that those were probably the toughest two to start with. This one wasn't as tough as those. Still had some challenges, but not as difficult as those. So far, that checks out. It wasn't a situation where I went out and tried to find the most difficult ones. Those two were sent to me by Fascinations for me to build a review, and that's why I started with those. This one is part of a collection of models that someone went on a wish list and bought for me. So thank you very much to that individual for buying some of the models off of my wish list and sending them to me for me to complete my helmet collection. So I do have more helmets to do. I put a poll up on YouTube recently asking which helmet would you like me to do next. I'm trying to rotate back and forth between catching up on some of my Star Wars models and doing other things. I've got a bicycle that I just finished. I've got the in-color Burrows from Hogwarts, Weasley's Home that I'm thinking of starting on. But I do want to squeeze in more Star Wars models. So if you'd like to take a vote on which helmet that I haven't done you'd like to see, you can leave it in the comments down below. Or go find that poll and vote on that, because there's also some other Star Wars models I could build. And this, by the way, was in no way timed to coincide with the recent announcements that there will be some Mandalorian models coming out soon. Star Wars Mandalorian models. I don't know for sure what they're coming out with. Speculated about that in recent news videos. Maybe they will come out with a Mandalorian helmet and it'll look similar but different from this. That would be kind of nice. And that would make perfect sense, because I haven't quite caught up with the helmets yet, and they're going to add more. So maybe there's a decent chance they're going to do that, because Star Wars models, I love them. I want to build them all, and they keep coming out with so many, and so many are exclusive, like the Disney ones, that it's difficult to get. That once upon a time I had all the Star Wars models, but that time is long gone. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I do want to thank you for watching. Thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters for continuing to support this channel, making these videos possible, making this channel continue on, making it easier for me to continue on at this channel. So thank you for that. And as always, keep on keeping on.